and welcome to Carnival Personnel's Sideshow. I'm Jacques.
I'm Joe.
And it's Christmas, Joe. Just a few days away. And what says Christmas more than...
Jesus?
Close. Superman the movie.
Ah.
Christopher Reeve, Richard Donner, 1978. And just a few days ago, it was the 40th anniversary. It was released in theaters on December 15th, 1978. I was 10 and a half, and you were 2.
Yeah.
Do you remember going and seeing it in the theater in 1978, Joe?
I take that back. I was 1.
Okay. Do you remember going to the theater and seeing it when you were 1, Joe?
No.
I do very much remember seeing it a great number of times, much to nobody's surprise. And it's funny, you are saying to yourself, Jacques, you have all these stories of growing up really poor. How did you go to the movies all the time? The Woburn Cinema's security was not very robust.
Let's just say Mexican border.
Yeah, they should have built the wall around. But seriously, we would just, my brother and I would go. But anyways, 40th anniversary of the movie that completely changed the trajectory and how superhero movies were viewed to mass audiences.
Right. Like, I think I said this to you earlier. What Star Wars did for sci-fi, what Star Wars did for sci-fi genre, Superman did for the comic book genre in film.
And you think about, Batman movie, a decade earlier, shot in 1966, but it didn't release. You shot the movie first.
Oh, yeah, and that was such a...
Can't be, but you have big names in it, but it was a farcical thing.
Yeah.
All through the 70s, you had things like Lou Ferrigno's The Hulk, and Wonder Woman was a show, and Spider-Man, and all these
But
things.
it was all TV, second tier, small potatoes.
This was the biggest of the big. This was, at the time, the most expensive movie at $55 million. Now, what's inflated about that, I'm going to take a step back. We're not going to sit here and read off some facts from Wikipedia.
As I look up Wikipedia on my phone.
We'll bring up some facts because I did some research. I want to talk about, how this movie made you feel and retrospective thoughts about it. But yeah, we'll do some nuts and bolts stuff. But it was shot for $55 million, most expensive movie, like I said. However, they shot part 1 and 2 simultaneous, so it's not like that $55 million went into one movie. That $55 million went into 1 3/4 of a movie because they were about 75% done shooting part 2 and 75% done shooting part 1, and then the producers in the studio said, hey, if this movie doesn't do well, there isn't going to be a part 2, so let's kind of hedge our bets and just finish 1. Let's get on schedule. Let's get 1 done, and then we'll go back and do 2. And Richard Donner directed both, or directed 1 3/4 of the other one, but then because he could never get along with the producers, got fired off of part 2. They shelved some of his ideas. Anyways, but I just want to talk about part 1.
Yeah, I had a very cuckoo childhood, very sheltered. I was never introduced to like the newest things when they came out. So when Star Wars was huge when I was a child, I had not gone to see Star Wars. My parents were much older and weirder, and they weren't with it. They weren't part of the pop culture zeitgeist, and they weren't even like quasi in touch with what was going on with pop culture. So Superman, albeit the most popular superhero even of their generation, when the Superman movie was out, I was a little kid when it actually came out, so I kind of missed that when it first was introduced. But when it ran on TV, it wasn't one of those things where I was like magnetically drawn to it. It was on, and if it came on, I'd watch it. But I didn't really. I don't think I've really seen all of Superman until maybe my teens. So I was really, unusual for me to be late to the party, but I was late to the party with Superman the movie.
So everyone who knows me knows Batman is my thing. And it's funny because I equate my love for Batman and Superman the same way I have arguments that Bobby Orr is the greatest player, not Wayne Gretzky. And I'm quick to point out, while yes, I believe Bobby Orr is the greatest and I have a number 4 tattooed on my left foot, I have a 99 tattooed on my right foot. Yes, I have a Batman tattoo on my right shoulder. I have a Batman Superman tattoo on my left shoulder. So
is Superman the son or the Holy Ghost? I don't know which is.
Well, more so, you got to look at it in the Hindu religions. We're going to make parables. I'm in a corner.
Right? Oh man, I was like, wow, he's going to drop some knowledge. Oh my God, no.
No, but so the movie, like we said, it changed everything, and it did phenomenally well. So if you take out, not half, but it probably cost like 35 to make it. Made 300 million in the theaters at the time. 300 million at the time. Then it's got to be $1 billion today. Mm-hmm. It's the Avengers, Infinity War, it's Titanic. It's in that, whatever the 1978, would equate to today.
Right. Well, maybe it had not met the phenomenon benchmark that Star Wars had the year before, but in 78 was probably, I think had to have been the biggest movie of the year.
So, and then you go down the list, and I don't want to, you can't go into the list of who was considered for Superman, because the list is everybody. And I mean, absolutely everybody from Muhammad Ali to Bruce Jenner. No, I'm not being unwoke. He was Bruce Jenner at the time. You go down the list, Sylvester Stallone, the number of people who came to the studios wanting to be Superman, and the number of people who said, no fucking way. Same thing with directors. They wanted Lucas, they wanted Spielberg, they wanted all these other huge people, and for a litany of different reasons, some people couldn't do it because of other obligations, like you go from Jaws to a Close Encounter, and it's like you couldn't fit Superman in there, you bastard.
Spielberg, yeah, right.
They want these huge producers. What also is interesting is the writing of it. You know who's credited with writing it?
No.
Puzo.
Oh, Mario Puzo.
And
from The Godfather.
Much like any great Hollywood movie, the story of how the writing worked and stuff like that. So Puzo wrote like the first draft of the script. It was like 500 pages. And then they ended up bringing in another writing team to kind of change it and wanted to make it not completely different, but wanted to campy it up a little bit. And the writing team, the guy was named Newman and Benton. And then Benton, ready for this, ended up not being able to do rewrites because he was too busy directing Late Night with David Letterman. And so
wait a minute, wait.
Yes.
That's impossible.
Oh no, Letterman. No, he started working with Letterman and stuff like that. For 2, I'm sorry.
For part 2?
Right, because they did rewrites on 2, so he couldn't come back and do that. And then they ended up, when Donner came on, he didn't like a lot of the stuff, and he hired probably a 5th writer at this point who is uncredited as a writer. The Writers Guild basically said, no, there's too many writing names on this already. Mm-hmm. So they had to make him a consultant, a creative consultant, which the Writers Guild fought. But this new writer who came in, and I'm never going to say his name right, Tom
Mankiewicz.
And he said, yeah, you can go back if you can get your hands on a Mario Puzo script. There's not one word from Mario Puzo that made it up onto the screen.
Wow.
So it's one of those things where it's amazing with all the money that it got made because of all the logistics that went into it. It took years to get the rights to it. And then, about 2/3 the way through, the filming was going good, and they realized, wait, we're going to make a lot of money in the theaters, we think, but we don't own the TV rights, so we better go back and negotiate to get the TV rights, but let's not tell them how well we think it's going. And the biggest thing was Christopher Reeves was a nobody.
Mm-hmm.
Who, when he came in for his screen test, was 188 pounds. And they said, not big enough, to be Superman, which is interesting because they also had talked to people like Dustin Hoffman. It's like...
Right, I know. Well, make him work somehow.
They wanted Christopher Reeve to wear a muscle suit. And he said no, and he went on an insane training regiment at the time and went up to close to 220 pounds.
Yeah.
To do it. It doesn't sound like much, but yeah, that's
devotion. Yeah.
In a short period, like 6-month period of time and stuff like. And I never saw if there was roids involved, but I don't know if steroids were around, and that was an 80s thing. I don't.
They were probably popularized, but I'm sure they were performance enhancing drugs of some sort in the late 70s.
So again, I'm not going to go into the whole thing. They have production problems filming here, there. They were all over the place for a lot of reasons. But I want to talk about the casting, about not who was going to be in it, but just who was in it. Mm-hmm. And they were they were counting on this to be the biggest of the big movies. Unlike Star Wars, everybody was nobody. When Star Wars started, there was nobody in that who had a name.
Alec Guinness.
Well, okay, I stand corrected. But I don't. Yeah, no, he was big in the States. No, you're right. And Carrie Fisher came from an acting family,
right?
But she herself was a kid. She was 18. Yeah, she hadn't done much. She hadn't done anything that you would think a studio would say, "This is going to be our
bankable,
bankable, right thing." They went with bankable here. It's funny. They locked up Marlon Brando 3 years before they actually shot this.
Mm-hmm.
An unthinkable 3.1, $3.2 million. A lot of money.
You said it wrong.
I did?
$3.2 million.
You said it wrong.
Oh.
You have to put your index finger out.
Oh, the pinky finger.
Pinky finger out. And bring
to my mouth.
Yes.
$1 million.
See, now people on the podcast know that you did the rolling eyes thing with the pinky to the lips. Okay. A lot of money. A lot of money for 1975. 11.25% of the gross on top of the 3.1. 3.2.
That's a lot of hamburgers.
Came out to $19 million. You ready for this? His contract called for his shooting to be done in 11 days for Superman 1 and 2. So he, because he was shooting them at the same time, he had to shoot everything. And as people know, there was a Donner cut for Superman 2 that never saw the light of day for nearly 35 years, which was very Jor-El heavy. But that's a lot of money. Marlon Brando planned on taking that money and spending it on doing a 13 parts Roots. Remember the
TV series
for Native Americans, like the story of the Native Americans that he was going to fund.
Huh.
I don't know if you know this, but when he won an Academy Award,
So what was the name? Like something Little Flower or something?
And right, exactly.
Except it was an award.
And so anyway, so you had Marlon Brando. You also had recent Academy Award winner Gene Hackman, who to this day he's my Lex Luthor. That's my Luthor. Again, and then in not a small role by any means, but Ned Beatty. Who
had Deliverance
and a couple other things. It's like I forget how things end up for Ned Beatty and Deliverance.
Let's not talk about it. That's for another podcast.
And you see this T-shirt, and you will never see a more accurate T-shirt or bumper sticker. If you hear banjo music, run. Thank you, Ned Beatty. Margot Kidder. Mm-hmm. Do you remember who played Perry White?
No.
A guy named Jackie Cooper, who in our world wasn't a big deal, but he was up for an Academy Award at 9 years old. He was a child actor and a huge hands in cement outside Man Chinese theater level actor as a child. He did a movie, and I did not know this. This does come from Wikipedia, and then I backed up and looked at a couple other places. He did a movie when he was 9 called Skippy, and they actually, his uncle is on set because his mom was in the business, and he came from a behind the scenes family, not an acting family, but he did bit parts, and he gets his big lead. They need emotion from him. So his uncle, who's on the set, takes his dog and tells him he's taking his dog outside and shooting the dog, which got the kid crying, which he just needed a kid crying. It's like, and fun fact, he did not shoot the dog, but the tears were real.
Yes.
It's like,
Hey.
He writes his memoirs like 60 years later, and he's like, yeah, I never forgave my uncle for that. It's like, but, those would be for all those child laws and animal laws on the set,
Right.
all those pesky things that got in the way of you absolutely doing whatever you wanted to get a shot in a movie. But yeah, so he was a big actor, but you go down the time, same thing. So I did not know this. The woman who played Miss Tossmacher,
Miss Tessmacher!
which I told you on Supergirl, like that's the name of the receptionist, and it's like when they yell for her, they say it like that, and I'm like, oh my god, I love that. There's also, and I'm jumping ahead, the scene where he gets the kryptonite put on him and pushed into the pool at Lex Luthor's thing, and I was pointing out to my oldest today, it's like I was telling him what an homage is in the film world or music or something like that. I'm like, remember in Batman vs. Superman where Batman had the kryptonite spear and he was going to stab Superman with it and kill him, and then they realized, well, both our mother's name is Martha, so you can't be a bad guy, and he throws his spear, and they're fighting in an underground building in the sub basement or building where there just happens to be like a reflective pool that he throws it in. I'm like, a subterranean, set
Yep.
with a pool, because who doesn't have a pool
In the subterranean area.
and it's like, and when he threw his spear in. Anyways, I saw
That was an homage to that scene from Superman.
so, but Miss Tussmacher,
Miss Tessmacher!
this woman's first movie that she was in,
Valerie Perrine.
Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like my favorite author, my favorite book. Her follow-up to that is a movie that did critically huge, and it's one of my favorite movies. Again, Dustin Hoffman, a biopic called Lenny, on the life of Lenny Bruce, that is amazingly good. Oscar winning. Oscar, all these different things. But she, so she coming into it, like everybody was somebody in it. So, and really the only real roll of the dice, Christopher Reeve.
Right. Yeah. The guy playing the lead.
So, like I said, I didn't want to get too much into, hey, you can read all this in Wikipedia yourself. I wanted to talk about how this movie makes me feel and my thoughts on it on its 40th anniversary. You can debate a lot of things. Who's Spider-Man? Like, who is the definitive Spider-Man? We are on our third Spider-Man in the last 20 years. We're on our fifth Batman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, look, depending on who's your Batman, it's like, it's Adam West. Some people, it starts and ends with Adam West. Some people, it's Michael Keaton. They're all wrong because we all know it's Christian Bale. Same thing. Who is the Joker? Is it Cesar Romero?
Mark Hamill.
Is it Keith? Is it Mark Hamill?
Yes, it is.
But you can have that debate. Superman is Christopher Reeves. I don't care who's played it and how big the budget is, who's came before it, who's come after it. In my world, Christopher Reeve will be Superman.
Right. It was just sheer coincidence that Christopher Reeve had a similar last name to George Reeves, who played the TV Superman. I mean, two different last names, but similar sounding. I just thought that was interesting. Go on.
And, but it is, and so I watched it again today, and it holds up. the story is what the story is, but it's their interpretation of it. And again, like the homage from this Superman the movie versus Batman v Superman a couple years ago, the woman who played Lois Lane in the TV series had that small cameo where she's riding on the train with her daughter, who looks out the window and sees Clark Kent racing along the tracks, and he jumps across the train. He beats the train to the intersection because he is
more powerful than a locomotive.
Right,
he's faster than a speeding bullet.
More powerful. And the little girl says, "Mommy, look at the man racing the train." And the woman who plays Lois Lane looks at the little girl and says, "Lois Lane, you and your imagination." And it's one of those things where, yes, they got her in there. The geek me who wouldn't have made that, like I at 10 didn't know who that old lady was. She's just some old lady who has one line in the movie.
Right.
But looking back on it, also, a spoiler alert, when Jonathan Kent, drops of his heart attack, right after having the arm around his son moment of trying to tell young Clark, who was just razzed by the football players and left to clean up their stuff after practice, and runs home, and when their car comes, it's like, "Clark, how did you get here?" And I just ran. Mm-hmm. And then Dad's like, "Showing off again, son," and have to talk. And he's like, "Look, I know it's hard to keep all this inside." And Clark's like, it's like, "Why do I have to take this shit?" But he doesn't say that. He says, "I could score a touchdown every time I got the ball, every time." And this is after he kicks it like off the screen, kicks it off the screen. And as far as "Son, I don't know why you're here, but I know it's not for scoring touchdowns." And it's just this amazing moment. One of my favorite moments, probably one of the most sweetest moments in a superhero movie that, of the father-son thing always kills me. And then he drops. And I'm still 40 years later, I was tearing up watching it.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I liked the feel of the movie. Up until this movie, I guess Superman was sort of lauded or portrayed in sort of a cheesy, campy, almost like a right-wing Christian-y kind of way. Like, he was very, very Eisenhower era because of the TV show. He stood for truth, justice, and the American way, which was kind of corny. And at this point, in the late 70s, this was a cynical fucking country. Vietnam.
Nixon.
Just the state of the world, it was just pollution and murder and it just disarray and,
Can I jump ahead for a sec?
Please do.
So, do you remember what happens at the start of the movie on Krypton? It starts with a trial of Zod and Zod's two henchmen when they get banished to the Phantom Zone. And here's Jor-El, played by Richard Pryor's friend, Marlon Brando. And it's a scene where the dome opens up, this spinning mirror comes in, and all of a sudden, in a blink of the eye, they're trapped inside this mirror, the three bad guys, and jetted into space. They live an eternity trapped in this mirror. And then it instantly turns to Marlon Brando. The next thing on the agenda, we got to evacuate the planet because it's about to blow up. And the council, surround him and says, "Look, you are our greatest scientist, but you're wrong on this. And if you cause a panic, and start telling people to evacuate the planet," and keep in mind, they're centuries ahead of us on technology, but they're telling their greatest scientist, who they just say, "You are the greatest scientist. You yourself will be jettisoned to the Phantom Zone, which you yourself, being our greatest scientist, discovered." And he says, "Neither I nor my wife will leave the planet," knowing that the planet, and he says, it's got a month at the most, probably a lot less time than that. But he promises the council, "Look, I'm not going to raise a panic. My wife and I will stay." He doesn't say anything about his son. Joe, that was 40 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Where
Are you drawing a parallel to
where
something?
the people in power looked to the greatest scientist and said, hogwash to your science. The planet is just fine.
You were going to cause a panic if you go out there with this information.
Anything going on in the science community that people in leadership, or let's say one country in particular, is ignoring the science?
Yeah, it's the climate change thing, stupid.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wait, you were being facetious.
No, I wasn't. Thank you for so we collectively agree that 98% of the most acclaimed atmospheric scientists in the world agree. But and fun fact, those 2%
Here we go.
also think smoking's good.
You know what? I want to be in the Phantom Zone right now.
But that's the thing. It's like, wow.
Is there a highway to the Phantom Zone?
It's a highway to hell.
Oh, okay.
But it was great. I'm watching that, and it's like, and I don't remember specifically them phrasing it that way till I saw it today. It's like, Jarrell, you are our greatest scientist, but we all think you're wrong. We're not science folks ourselves. Cut to the planet collapsing all around them.
And Jarrell going down with the planet.
And Jarrell going down. And it's funny, like the council has a secret meeting with the secret police saying, we are seeing a large reading of energy being used in Jarrell's home. Go investigate. Well, that's because they're getting ready to launch the ship. So back to, the movie. Another great thing.
Real quick, you kind of sidetracked me from my point, was that at this time, Superman had been sort of hokey, kind of fantastical, almost blasé. And then in just sort of like taken almost for granted, like, oh yeah, Superman, it was a thing, he's a superhero comic book, whatever. But the movie made him somehow relevant, necessary, like something that the country kind of needed, a superhero, somebody to kind of save the day, to take pride in the country again. This is pre-Reagan era, this sort of like this sort of almost like a patriotism, like, yeah, like we have to.
You got the what is the gas lines? Like,
yeah.
You have those.
Yeah, the gas shortage crisis.
You had a lot of strife, like globally and stuff,
mm-hmm.
and you couldn't have more of the red, white, and blue. Coming in to save the day,
right? And the movie made you feel like Superman was, something of relevance now. Like it was modernized, but it wasn't. It looking at it from, I guess, from our perspective, 40 years later, back at the movie, you can kind of feel like, okay, there are some cheesy, hokey, wink of the eye moments, that they're making, light of certain things about Superman, like he's saving a school bus full of children from falling off a bridge. The whole earthquake sequence at the end, or, the nuclear explosion causing the earthquake. Those are all basic Superman type things. But they're treated in such a way that it seems plausible and not cheesy. It didn't seem hokey at the time.
Well, at the same time, much like what Star Wars had done just a couple years before, it was game changing with special effects.
Right.
It completely, and it's funny if you've seen the making of and the behind the scenes footage, the things they tried with like the flying, truly firing crash test dummies out of cannons. I mean, it's funny because by the time Donner got to the set and took over as director, they had spent $2 million. Like I said, it was $55 million between part one and 3/4 part two. $2 million is like 4% of the budget on failed test flights. Like they tried the cannon thing. They tried like early versions of what are now drones and stuff like that, but there wasn't enough movement on it. It didn't look real.
Mm-hmm. Did they just try like throwing Christopher Reeve out of a plane?
They dropped him from, but they ended up doing like three. Like how he took off and land was one way, how he flew was the other, how he turned and flight. So they had to, from because they didn't have CGI.
Yes.
There was. You didn't have all of. So it was amazing when you hear about these movies. And again, it's like what they had to do to make Avatar, and why it's taken so long to do the second Avatar, because they're completely changing cinematography. And the same thing with what Star Wars did and what the Lucas people did. And Donner, he's in that echelon of people. The last half of the last century, who completely changed how films were made, to not make it look hokey and cheesy, and like he did on the TV. Like, you couldn't have him fly like you would on a 70s TV show. You couldn't have the hokiness.
Right. You couldn't have William Catt in a Greatest American Hero type effect.
Right. Oh, speaking of, and
Which came
it's a
afterwards,
really
by the way.
good believer in it. Stop talking to me. But but when you're talking about the campiness of Superman and how they had to change it, you're talking the latest iteration of Superman in the public eye
Was 20 years prior.
No, it was dun dun dun. Meanwhile, back at the Hall of Justice.
Oh, right.
like
The Super Friends.
and with Wendy Marvin and Superdog,
Wonder Twins actor.
right. Well, you have the Wonder Twins, San and Jana. No, I'm not going down there. But campy.
Yes.
To this, and how do you have to take it that seriously?
But then you also look at how they preserve the core elements of what made Superman appealing and great. His suit was, red and blue with the cape and the yellow S, the red S with the yellow shield. It was vibrant. It wasn't dark and gritty. Snyder. Excuse me. It popped. Superman popped off the screen when you saw him. He was larger than life. The scenery was, Metropolis was, essentially New York. I think, right? Was the film in New York? Yeah. So it had a grittiness to it, but it wasn't dark and brooding. It was just like Superman in real life. Superman is, he could be real.
What I liked about this director's version, it keeps in real time. He crashes. He takes his father dies when he's 18. He leaves. He's gone for 12 years. And it explains where he is and why and what happens at the Fortress of Solitude and how he learns from Jor-El. And, it broke my heart because he leaves his mom. He says, look, I got to go figure this shit out. And the mother's like, okay, well, just don't forget me. 12 years later, he resurfaces. But there's these great moments where Jor-El is talking to him and explaining, this is why we sent you here. This is where, and it was not just, it was the origin story, but it's like, this is where your powers come from, and this is why, and this is, our retcon. I'm not going down the geek hole, but it was a really good, also a father-son thing when he first flies out. And in the regular version, you don't have the follow-up, his father explaining, hey, it's okay to feel good about yourself and be prideful, but keep your shit in check. By the way, this is why you have to keep your secret identity, protect the ones you love. No one will be able to hurt you. They can only hurt you by hurting the ones you love. And it explains it. And it's really, really, you brought all these writers on who did some great stuff. It's really well written.
And let's not gloss over the importance or the relevance of Lois Lane as a character in this movie. She wasn't just some throwaway, female counterpart or whatever, a love interest to the main male character. She was a ball buster. She was a broad in all, in all positive senses of the term. She was a hard-nosed reporter who wasn't taking shit from anybody. She was attractive physically, but she was also not just sort of this passive person. She was, going to get after the story, and she wasn't, she wasn't just sort of this damsel in distress until she was. But that comes later.
It's one of my favorite lines in movies. You got me. Who's got you?
Right.
I use that a lot. I do love that.
But what about the flying scene from that movie? Where Lois Lane goes on her first date with Superman.
Okay. if there's one thing I don't love is like, can you read my mind? That whole thing. It's like,
it's a little funny.
I'm not gonna fast forward through it, but it's not.
But the whole like it doesn't give you any sort of like, oh, that's nice kind of.
Yeah.
When you see her like flying with Superman, although I don't know, she can fly. There comes the physics part of it. Although Superman can be horizontal with the horizon, like if he can fly horizontally, that doesn't mean that she can fly horizontally, right? Or is it because she's going so fast that he's dragging her along?
I agree, because that is not what hyperspace looks like.
I'm sorry, I'm ruining a nice magic moment.
No, it's great. No, because
But the flowing blue dress looks very nice.
But you do know. I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson will tell you, if you do rotate the Earth backwards, time itself does rewind.
Wouldn't I mean, if Superman had that sort of ability, I mean, I guess that took a lot out of him to rewind. Because now we're bouncing all over the place. But that whole rewinding the Earth's axis to rewind time, bit of a leap, I guess. I didn't know that's how time space worked. But you would think like he would like. I guess he didn't want to go too far back in time. It would take too long for him to go so far back that he would like, save his father from dying somehow, or
go back and just stop Lex from getting the codes.
Yeah.
Here's another great thing about the movie.
Not give Biff the almanac. Oh, that's a different thing.
One as he's wearing his Back to the Future shirt. Now you screwed me up.
We were talking about time travel and rotating the axis the wrong way.
Yeah, one of the great things about this movie is what the Marvel movies get, lauded for, the levity in them, and Lex Luthor, a complete mass murderer. I mean, he kills a bunch of people in this movie in some brutal ways. You only see one real killing in a brutal way, where the police detective is following, his henchman Otis to the secret lair, and he throws a guy in front of a train. He literally throws a cop in front of the train. But he has no problem knowing that, he's going to kill tens of millions of people by destroying the Andreas Fault and wiping the West Coast into the ocean.
And what was he making out of that whole thing?
It was a land grab, because he had bought all the desert land.
What was he going to call the land?
The new West Coast? But
yeah.
Are you leading to my favorite story about our friend Biff, not from Back to the Future? Okay, I'll sidebar for a second. It's one of the reasons I love our friend Biff, who's on the podcast with us, because the plot of the movie, spoiler alert, if Lex Luthor steals this 500 megaton nuclear bomb and hits just the right part of the Andreas Fault.
And where did he get that bomb, by the way? What country?
From the United States.
Oh, was it a U.S.?
Yeah.
That had a U.S. flag on. Okay, never mind.
Right.
I'm
No, we're going to get to the scene because I want to talk about the levity. The whole idea is if he hits it, the whole West Coast will separate from the other part of the San Andreas Fault, then making this worthless desert beachfront property. And so he's been buying up all this land in the desert for a decade, with this plan in mind. So he's a mass murderer, but the whole scene of getting the bomb with Ned Beatty, and there's a military convoy taking the missile to a launch site, because you can't just launch a missile from the back. Anyways, but the whole comedy of what was the first one? They stage a car crash, so the whole military will come to a stop, and there's this beautiful blonde woman, Miss Taskmacher, in the street, and they got to give her mouth to mouth. It is. Ned Beatty sneaks on the back of and changes the code to the coordinates so that when they launch it, it will go where they want it to. Mm-hmm. Flash forward. So, like I said, one of my favorite lines is, "You have me, who has you." So Ned Beatty's character changes the code. He meets back up with Luthor, and as they're driving away, he goes, "Otis, it's not that I don't trust you. I don't trust you." That's like catching burps. That's something that I say to my boys almost daily. Squishy, go brush your teeth. You know, it's like, let me smell your breath. It's not that I don't trust you. It's that I don't trust you. And and it's funny because, you know, he saw that today and he's like, that's where you got to Papa. And I didn't say, yes, your father has had no original ideas in his life. Everything I do is quoted from old movies, TV shows, or music. Deal with it. How do you like school, Billy? Close. So he, so then, you know, it turns out that Ned Beatty, his arm wasn't long enough, so there's supposed to be 4 coats. It's like 22, 17, 107. No, 117. And Luther's like, Wait, what was that? Lost 2 numbers? 117. It was 11 and then a 7. And there's 4 digits. Oh, sorry, Mr. Luther, my arm's not long enough. Anyways, few years back, I'm driving with our good friend Biff from Los Angeles to Phoenix for a hockey tournament. About 3-4 hours into the drive, we are in the middle of the desert. We could be on the California side, could be on the, you know, the Arizona side, but it's on the stretch of land where you don't see anything but a few cacti here and there for a good 75 miles. And so when our friend John calls and says, where are you guys, without blinking, Biff says, Otisburg. And that's when I fell in love. Like, that's when I knew Biff, you know, if I was gonna leave my wife for a 5'4" Japanese goalie,
male,
that's right. It's 2018. Be woke.
Okay.
You know. Anyways, yeah, and.
So Otisburg was the fake name that was written on.
So Lex Luthor and his big, you know, impressive room is, of course, bad guys have to tell their entire story plan,
and they have to lay it out on an enormous glass drawing on the floor.
They have a map of the U.S.,
a lit floor, by the way,
lit floor, and they have a map, and then, you know, Otis puts the new map of what the new United States will look like.
It's like a clear overlay of the old one,
and it's all Lutherville, Luxylvania, and he's going down the coast, and he's like, Otisburg. Well, Miss Tussmarker has a Otisburg. It's just a little place. I'll erase it, Mr. Luthor.
Right. It's like written in crayon.
It is. It's like he took a Sharpie. It's like you have this whole impressive layout and he scribbles Otisburg on there. Oh, and that's the kind of stuff. So, like, when you think DC movies, levity is not at the top of the forefront. But now,
Snyder.
You think Guardians. You think X-Men. You think even Infinity War. There's these moments of laugh out loud comedy. Period. At the end, it's like. And that was so wonderful about this movie. You know, it had a little campy, had a little cheese, had tears, had laugh out loud comedy. And most of it came from Gene Hackman.
Now, what's the through line throughout this entire movie? What's the glue, and I think, in my opinion, and maybe yours, that holds this movie together and actually is probably what makes you feel like a kid again when you see this movie each and every time? What is it that holds this movie together from start to finish?
From start to finish, okay. I'm going to say, and it's something that, you know, was said, and it made the boys here stand up because it was something they might not have known about Superman's character, his genuineness and his honesty. And, like, he can't lie. Like, he tells Lois Lane in the interview, I never lie, period, at the end. And even when Miss Tessmacher says, I'll save you, but you have to save my mom, because she finds out, okay, the one bomb is going to take out the Andreas Fault. But in case anything ever happened and Superman went to save that bomb, he'd have to choose, you know, Hackensack, New Jersey is going to go down. And that's more populous. It's here, you know, it's where you live. And that's where her mother lived. And she said, if I save you, will you save my mom first? And he's like, but Lois and Jimmy Olsen. And then he goes, I won't save you unless you do it. She knows if he says this is what his word is. His word is everything. Above all else, he has all these incredible powers. But his genuineness, his his Boy
Sincerity.
Scoutness, his right.
And his integrity.
That's the biggest thing about him. You know, and that's something that Jarrell tells. And the thing is, he's raised by Jonathan Kent, a Midwestern farmer,
Salt of the earth.
salt of the earth, shirt off the, his back kind of guy. His father, from another galaxy, thousands of years away,
Went down with the ship.
They don't have a lot in common, but their moral compass was set, and it's pointing in the same direction. And they raised their son. Jarrell raised him. Jarrell raised him from 18 to 30 because he's with him for 12 years, but led by example. You know what I mean? And instilled these things. And when he has these father-son talks, it's like it's fine to be vain, but you got to keep it in check. This is what. But the genuineness and the goodness and the honesty. That's the through line that I see.
Right.
Did you see something different?
Well, I was actually kind of leaning, trying to lead you down the path of more of a technical.
Oh, okay.
More of a theatrical or cinematic through line. For me, the thing that brings me back, the thing that brings me the most feeling throughout the entire movie, which is probably the case with a lot of these big movies, but for this movie in particular, what sticks with you the most, immediately after you're watching the movie, and then days and years and millennia after seeing the movie, the music, the score,
Right, okay, yeah.
the theme, the iconic Superman theme by John Williams. I know I didn't go to Wikipedia. Did John Williams do the entire score, or did he do just the theme?
I'm going to say, I don't know. But I will say, and we talked about it on last week's podcast, that music gets me. I mean, I'm talking shivers down my spine every single time I hear it. And whether it's a 5-6 second clip when the little guy is playing the old, DC Heroes on PS3, every time that the Superman character takes off, you hear the dun dun dun, but the build to that crescendo, just I will never tire of it. It's goosebumps for me. And one day we are going to do a sideshow just talking about is John Williams the most successful person in feature film maybe ever.
Right. And he did do the entire soundtrack score. So yes.
And it does. It just makes it.
With the London Symphony Orchestra, which he used quite prolifically in that era of time filmmaking. So, but yeah, the John Williams score is what sticks with me the most. I mean, that's just what you sing that in the shower. You anytime you're just thinking, you want to be inspired. Just think of the Superman theme. I don't know why you want to be inspired in the shower.
Hey, to each their, again, 2018.
Exactly.
At least we not judge. And I will. I'll probably watch it again this weekend. This weekend I'm going to get Scrooged in.
Oh yes. I think I might be watching this right after you guys leave here. Like I might just go right upstairs and watch Superman. Do you have Superman 2? Do you have Superman 3?
Because that's all there was. Just part 1, 2, and 3. That's all there is. Yep. Number 3 is with Richard Pryor. I don't know. Fun fact about Richard Pryor and Marlon Brando. Both fantastic actors.
They are great. Were they?
Richard Donner. Let's get back to him just before. He ever do anything else you like?
He did a little movie called The Goonies, which also had a little Superman nod in it. If you remember Sloth, rips open his shirt at the end. And they play a little bit of the theme. Lost Boys, which I had never seen.
It is.
I'm a jerk.
It is. So our little guy just walked in the room, and his mouth was. Did you see it gaping? I don't know the first time, because that's Mom's favorite movie. Mm-hmm. That's management's, if not favorite movie, it's top 5.
Right.
And I could watch that. Again, why do you need the TV if you got a TV guide? Famous line in it. But
See,
he did that.
this is funny because you had never seen Goonies until
Right,
last year.
that's right.
And I had never seen Lost Boys.
And you couldn't figure out how it's possible a film guy got through.
Or a Richard Donner guy and had not seen, Goonies, but
what else did Richard Donner do that we might have liked?
Scrooged.
Yeah.
Yes.
So-
oh my God. It's we would go on and on about Scrooge, but Lethal Weapon.
Lethal
movies?
Weapons.
Yeah.
He 3. I don't know if he did part 9, but I know he did the first 3.
X-Men.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then X-Men Wolverine.
Oh right, yeah. See, I kind of
Those aren't his only movies, but I mean, man.
those are the hits.
I know. But yeah, because you don't think it's like, wait a minute, Scrooged and Superman?
Right. Well, he's got to eat.
and only like a few years apart. Anyway, so it is. It's happy 40th. Another fun thing. Superman's 80 now. 1938 is when it was when he was created. So the movie came out pretty close. Like the first the copyright, and yeah, I did not know this. Looked it up, but the publishing copyright is April 1938. But the first magazine was published in Action Comic #1 was published in June of that year. It actually came out in June that year. So it was a little over 40 years, like 40,
It was the 40th anniversary.
40th anniversary when it came out, which it's so funny to think, anyways, how the numbers have come together. But yeah, it's 80.
I know you like to only really talk about the main, or the only Superman movies, the first 3, the Superman 1, 2, and 3. I heard rumor of a Superman's Returns. Any thoughts on that?
The movie, was that the Brandon
Routh
thing?
That which was supposed to be, it was basically a direct follow-up to Superman 2. It was supposed to be done in the vein of the Donner movies.
So, what's your feature? What's your feat? My friend Bill Fay produced Superman Returns. I really liked it. It takes place, so at the end of Superman 2, spoiler alert, he goes to find Krypton. There's a rumor that there's part of Krypton still exists, or the city of Kandor. We won't go down that rabbit hole. But it's a 5-year journey into space. So his return, and he just leaves. It's one of those things. He just leaves. Turns out that Luthor's out of jail because, fun fact, if you arrest somebody and you're not there to testify, it's like not reading them their Lin-Manuel Miranda, right? Isn't that? Did the
like
guy
that.
who wrote Hamilton?
I think
right?
he had something
Okay.
to do with the Bill of Rights.
You
yeah.
like that? You
Yeah.
see what I did
Yeah.
there? And so he comes back to Earth. Lois has a 5-year-old son, and yes, and it's like look, and the long story short is, that movie cost $200 million to make. The industry thought it was going to make $500 million. Batman Begins cost $150. It's supposed to make $300 million. Superman comes in making. Superman was supposed to make $400 million. Batman was supposed to make $300 million. Batman was $150. Superman was $200. Bill Fay did both of them, and Superman came in at $350. Superman was supposed to make $450, came in at $4. Batman was supposed to come in at $3, came in at $350. So Batman made $50 more than the industry thought. Superman, while making, a lot more, didn't hit industry projections, so it was considered
A bomb.
Or
Or a failure. It fell short of
It's like, so it doubled its money, but it didn't quadruple its money, so they scrapped it, I think.
But like critically, it wasn't. It was mixed reviews.
Mixed reviews, but I mean, other than the last wave of Marvel movies, what hasn't had a mixed review?
Right. But I guess we probably don't want to linger too much. Was it Brandon Routh's? Was it his performance was kind of milquetoast?
I think people thought Superman doesn't have a son. Can you imagine in 1978 if they went with Muhammad Ali? It's like Superman's not black. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like Jesus is white. He's so that would have been an interesting thing. I think. Oh God, I see him. Who's the actor?
Kevin Spacey.
Kevin Spacey. Thank you. I thought he was a great Luke. I mean, it's Kevin Spacey,
Right.
You know,
Oh, did he play it over the? He played it maybe too over the top.
all
some people thought?
the stuff aside about him, he's a pretty good actor usually. I mean, again, it's like I liked it. You know, I mean,
Maybe it's funny because we talked. At the top we were talking about how Superman, before Superman the movie came out, Superman was treated as sort of a cornball kind of thing, and now Superman Returns comes out as sort of an homage and a link to a movie that had come out 30 years prior, and that is looked at as sort of corny. Like there's a lot of chewing the scenery in that movie. There's a lot, there's a lot of hammy kind of takes in that movie. Maybe it was looked on as a little too cheesy. And this is like right around the time when Iron Man was coming. I think did Iron Man come out
after?
Iron Man came out after Superman Returns. I thought Superman Returns.
Batman came out before Iron Man.
Okay, so it was Batman was 06.
So Batman was
05.
5. And Iron Man was 08 because it was the 10th anniversary, 10-year thing.
But so Superman Returns was 07.
Was before. Yeah, Superman was before it.
Okay.
And like I said, it did well. It was supposed to make, $450. It made $4. So
I guess it's because it didn't reinvent Superman. It was sort of like a
no, the reinventing might have hurt it because, like I said, people really upset he had a kid, and it was left a little ambiguous. It was left. Yeah, this probably is Superman's son, but they never said.
And maybe the whole plot was a mess to begin with, right? The whole kind of story of the movie was a little,
Yeah, I mean, it was like, so Luthor's out of jail on a technicality where he obviously killed these people, stole 2 nuclear weapons, and launched it. You go down the list. But again, I mean, it's a DC movie. It's a Superman movie. It would really, really have to be awful for me not to.
Right. Like Christopher Reeve would have had to direct a Superman movie for it to be awful in your eyes.
Pretty much.
Yeah, like that would have to be the case.
It
would have to have some sort of like cornball message about, doing away with nuclear arms.
Stop.
Stop. Like a really stupid kind of.
This is where. Good night, everybody, and don't forget. But no, and even now, like Henry Cavill, I think it's good.
This Man of Steel. Snyder,
but he's gone now, so they're gonna have to replace, that. It's like,
do they have to really?
Well, they're going to if they want. Can you have a DC universe in which he doesn't exist? Even on the CW, they had to at one point. You had to bring him in.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Brendan Roth, not a huge guy. He's not. Christopher Reeves was 6'4", 220 pounds.
Yeah.
Anyways, it was fine, but just focusing on this, it's great. It holds up. It's a Superman story. It still does. It's fun to see. Like I said, I watched it today. I will probably watch it before the next podcast again because I got that kind of time. Do I have that kind of time? No.
Well, you make that kind of time.
You do indeed. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, happy anniversary, happy birthday, happy whatever you want to call it, to Superman the movie, to Superman in general.
If you're a little Christmased out or a little Hanukkah'd out, and you want to take a little break from the new iteration of the Grinch, because remember all the protests they had like last year in Washington, crying out for a new Grinch movie.
Yes.
And the Charlie Brown Christmas movie, which the music is better, the story's better, a little less blatant racism than Thanksgiving special. But if you want a little diversion, why don't you take 2.5 hours and watch the director's cut of Donner's Superman the movie?
Right. Has there ever been like a super cut of the 2 movies put together, Superman 1 and 2, because it's all one long saga? I'm probably not.
I watch them back to back, and you just cut out the credit sequence at the
I guess
end.
So yeah, you make your own, right? So all right. Well, that was it. That's the podcast.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Life Day.
I wish everybody a happy Kwanzaa, but Kwanzaa makes me crazy.
You quacker, you. That's enough of that. All right, don't forget to